Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Bhalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yamuna Tiravanam Chadi Yamuna Tiravanam Chadi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Prajajanaranjana Jamunatiravana Chani Jamunatiravana Chani Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Madhava Kunjabi Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Jaya Vishnupada Arja Astatara Satasi Simadas Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaura Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yesterday morning we almost completed the honeybee portion. The guru, one of the gurus of Avadhuta Brahmana. And then, so we'll complete that, and then we'll read about the elephant, and then more bees. So I guess more bees. The elephant, number 14 of the 24. This is, Purijan's list is a little different than other lists, but that's where we're starting from. From the elephant, the Avadhuta has learned to avoid wanting to exploit the body of a woman. He tells Maharaj Yadu that even a mighty bull elephant that wants to touch the she-elephant can be lured into a covered hole, horn. We read this. Yes. So now it's 15, excuse me. 15 is more bees. 15 and 16. Sorry about that. So in his list, that's number 15 of the 24. Here's the translation. We'll hear it twice. The greedy man is like the bee who struggles to produce a large quantity of honey, which is then stolen by a man who will enjoy it personally or sells it to others. No matter how carefully one hides his hard-earned wealth or tries to protect it, there are those who are expert in detecting the whereabouts of valuable things, and they will steal it. That was 15, and from the BBT purport, which we're going to read also. The word artha, bit, indicates one who, by hook or crook, is expert in stealing the hard-earned wealth of other people. The bees work frantically to produce honey, but they will not enjoy their honey, as Lord Krishna states, Ritu Sarva Harash Chaham. I will come as death personified and steal everything. Somehow or other, one's hard-earned material opulence will be stolen, and therefore, as mentioned in this verse, one should not work uselessly like the foolish honeybee. So that's also just taking directly from the BBT report. The Avadhuta concludes this point in text 16 by comparing mendicants like brahmacharis and sannyasis to beekeepers who, quote, are entitled to enjoy the property painstakingly accumulated by householders dedicated to family enjoyment. And then we'll hear about the deer, 17 and 18. The Avadhuta explains that a hunter's flute can attract and lure a deer to its death. One, serious about spiritual progress, should therefore carefully study the deer's example and avoid mundane songs. The Avadhuta offers the innocent sage Rishishringa, mentioned in the Mahabharata, as an illustration of his point. Rishishringa, who had been raised by his father to be a perfect brahmachari and kept for his whole life from even seeing a woman, was lured by, quote, singing, dancing, and musical entertainment of beautiful women, and fell totally under their control, just like a pet animal. Now here it says, expressed in Mahabharata, it's the main place it's expressed is in Ramayana, but there's reference also in Mahabharata. Paragraph. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti adds, in his comment on text 17, that instead of listening to mundane songs, we should listen to Bhagavad Gita. It's also to be sung. Now we'll go to the commentaries for these verses, starting with text 15. We already read the translation, so this is like the bee that gathers honey accumulating a large sum of money, someone will come along and steal it. Bhaktisiddhanta's slightly different translation. Greedy people earn wealth with great labor, but the person who has struggled so much to acquire this wealth is not always allowed to enjoy it himself and give it in charity to others. A greedy person is like a bee who works hard to make some honey, which is then stolen by someone who will either eat it or sell it. No matter how carefully one tries to protect his hard-earned wealth, there will always be someone who's able to steal it. And we read the parts of the purport, so I'm going to skip, the first half. One may argue that a wealthy man may conceal his money so expertly by investing it in bank stocks, properties, and so on, there's no danger of theft. Only foolish people actually hide money by burying it in the ground or placing it under a mattress. Is that just an American thing, hiding money under a mattress? Yeah, it's not an Indian thing. It's an American thing. In India, too. In a mattress. Or a pillow. Either. But, despite the fact that the majority of the world's wealth has been accumulated in highly developed capitalistic countries, these countries are being severely challenged by many enemies who threaten at any moment to overrun the capitalists and steal their wealth. Similarly, we often find that the children of wealthy people are kidnapped, and then their parents must pay huge ransoms. Sometimes the parents themselves may also be kidnapped. Furthermore, there are so-called investment counselors who are expert in stealing the money of people. And in the modern age, governments have also become expert in stealing money. Taxation. Then comes this Arthavit message. Short purport by Bhaktisiddhanta. The conditioned souls who are averse to the service of the Supreme Lord fall into a life of inauspiciousness by accumulating material possessions for their own enjoyment. Paragraph. A honeybee works hard to collect money, and yet it is enjoyed by someone else, and so an intelligent person should not allow himself to suffer the same fate. This is another lesson we learn from honeybee. And slightly longer purport commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. What wealth greedy persons collect with great difficulty, but neither enjoy or spend, is enjoyed by another person, just as the collector of honey, knowing how to attain his goal, takes honey collected by the bees. Paragraph. Wealth accumulated without giving or enjoying is taken by others. The beekeeper teaches this. Another person who is stronger enjoys what is collected by another person, just as a person enjoys honey gathered by the bees. Quote, how can another person understand one has wealth if one hides it? Answer, some persons understand wealth by certain symptoms in another person and know how to get it. Artha. It. A honey collector knows where to get the honey in the hollow of the tree by following the bees. So that's the honey one. Honey's the bee. Honeycomb is in the jar. The greedy man is like the bee who struggles to produce a large quantity of honey, which is then stolen by a man who will enjoy it personally or sell it to others. As Lord Krishna states, Ritu Sarva Harashchaham, I will come as death personified and steal everything. In 34 Bhagavad Gita. Somehow or other, one's hard-earned material opulence will be stolen, and therefore, as mentioned in this verse, one should not work uselessly like the foolish honeybee. Okay. That's 15. Now we're moving on to the deer. Next, 16, 17. Just as a hunter takes away the honey laboriously produced by the honeybees, similarly, the mendicants such as brahmacharis and sannyasis are entitled to enjoy the property painstakingly accumulated by householders dedicated to family enjoyment. Scriptures state, quote, saintly mendicants in the sannyas order of life and brahmacharis have first right to enjoy the sumptuous foodstuffs produced by the householders. If the householders enjoy such foodstuffs without first offering them in charity to the mendicants, such neglectful householders must undergo the lunar fast called Chandrayana. Family life, one must overcome the natural tendency towards selfishness by giving abundant charity. Modern society foolishly does not observe such Vedic injunctions, and, as a result, the world has become overrun by envious grihamedis, or persons wholly and solely dedicated to personal gratification in family life. Therefore, the whole world is seized in an uncontrollable spasm of violence and suffering. If one wants to live peacefully, one must follow Vedic injunctions regulating family life. Although the householders work very hard to accumulate money, the saintly sannyasis and brahmacharis have the right to first enjoy the fruits of such labor. The conclusion is that one should first give first priority to spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness and thus perfect one's life. Then, even without personal endeavor, one will be supplied all of one's necessities by the mercy of the personality of God. Summarizing Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary by Bhaktisiddhanta, it is possible to enjoy sense gratification without personal endeavor. In this regard, I accept the honey thief as my spiritual master. The brahmacharis and sannyasis are entitled to be the first to enjoy the sumptuous food produced by the householders. If a householder enjoys such food without first offering it in charity to the mendicants, he must purify himself by undergoing the atonement called Chandrayanam. That's from Parashara Smriti. Parashara Smriti 1.51. Jiva Goswami writes a little differently. Krama Sandarbha. This verse describes the person from the place called Swasha who collects the bees' honey. The sannyasis enjoys first, before others, the objects like food belonging to householders who have prospered in wealth, grahashishva, who are full of desire, asasanam. Jiva Goswami. Okay, so now was still the bee. Now it's the saintly person, this is the deer. A saintly person dwelling in the forest, in the renounced order of life, should never listen to songs or music promoting material enjoyment. Rather, a saintly person should carefully study the example of the deer, who is bewildered by the sweet music of the hunter's horn and is thus captured and killed. And the BBT purport, very short. If one becomes attached to the sense gratification of materialistic music and songs, one will develop all the features of material entanglement. One should hear Bhagavad Gita or the song sung by the Supreme Lord. Bhaktisiddhanta, his purport, just as a deer becomes captivated by the hunter's enchanting music, sannyasis will certainly fall down from the path of renunciation by listening to songs promoting sense gratification. This is the lesson to be learned from the deer. It is well known how Rishishringa Muni became ensnared by hearing the singing of beautiful women. And Vishwanath's commentary. Attachment to mundane songs and music is an anartha. This should be learned from the deer. The vanaprasthas and the sannyasis should never hear mundane songs and music, which simply promote sense gratification. Instead, they should hear songs in glorification of the Supreme Lord. And I think we'll just go one more verse, number 18. Mention of Rishishringa is here. Becoming attracted to the worldly singing, dancing, and musical entertainment of beautiful women, even the great sage Rishishringa, son of Mrigi, fell totally under their control, just like a pet animal. Now, in Ramayana, the Rishishringa's father is Vibhandaka. And apparently, in Mahabharata, it's Mrigi. But I'm far more familiar with Vibhandaka name. So here's the BBT purport. By the way, Hridayananda Maharaj was working on, he didn't complete it for various reasons, a translation, a readable translation of Mahabharata. One of the reasons he stopped is there's so many different versions of Mahabharata that, it became difficult for him to find, like, here's Mahabharata. Anyway, he mentioned Mrigi here. Rishishringa, the young son of the sage Mrigi, was intentionally brought up by his father in an atmosphere of complete innocence. Mrigi, Rishi, thought that if his son were never exposed to the sight of a woman, he would always remain a perfect brahmachari. But by chance, the inhabitants of the neighboring kingdom, who were suffering from a long-term drought, received divine advice that rain would return to their kingdom only after the Brahmana named Rishishringa stepped foot in it. Therefore, they sent beautiful women to the hermitage of Mrigi to entice Rishishringa to bring him back with them. Since Rishishringa had never even heard about women, he easily fell for their trap. Paragraph. The name Rishishringa indicates that the young sage was born with a deer-like horn growing out of his forehead. If, like the deer, a rishi becomes attracted to sweet musical sounds promising sense gratification, then, like the deer, he is quickly vanquished. A thoughtful person should humbly take instruction from the deer, who is doomed by attraction to musical sense gratification. And Bhaktisiddhanta summarizes Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary this way: the most instructive example of a renounced person being attracted by songs of sense gratification is Rishi Sringamuni, who came under the control of beautiful women in that way. Let's take a look at these nice images. So that was the image on the screen here. That's 15. And here's image for 16. The conclusion is that one should give first priority to spiritual advancement in Krishna consciousness and thus perfect one's life. Then, even without personal endeavor, one will be supplied all of one's necessities by the mercy of the personality of Godhead. Now that's the mendicant's position, and the Grahasta's position is different. That the agricultural field doesn't just happen because a mendicant walks by. Here's a nice photograph of two deer, and here's the commentary. If one becomes attached to the sense gratification of materialistic music and songs, one will develop all the features of material entanglement. Rather, a saintly person should carefully study the example of the deer, who is bewildered by the sweet music of the hunter's horn, and thus is captured and killed. So I think we'll end there, because the next one is a fish, and it's another section. So honeybee, elephants, and deer. Specifically with this one, the mundane music. In all cultures of the world, there's categories of music, and people like music. It's a language that people understand, even if you're not so literate, to understand things through song and music, and how it's conveyed and what is conveyed and so forth has everything to do with the modes of nature and the particular period of time that people are living in and what seems to attract them and so on. And there's lower thoughts, there's higher thoughts, and there's passionate thoughts somewhere in between. And so songs are like that. We have the example, Narada tells the example of who was Narada in his previous life. Narada in his previous life was a Shudra. And who was he before he was a Shudra? He tells that also. He was a Gandharva in the heavenly planets, and he was singing songs to enchant and enchant the ladies. And one of the demigods understood what he was up to. They said, you don't belong in the heavenly realm. Song is not for that purpose. You should become a Sudra. Boom, became a Sudra. So, and it's not only in the heavenly, it's not only in the human plane, but heavenly existence can also be victimized in this way. And sages can also be victimized, what to speak of the lolas. So, sound and musical sound is powerful. It's very appropriate, this particular emphasis for Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan book, because many people become attracted by kirtan, although they don't know what it is, but they become attracted by kirtan. You know this, public festivals and devotees having kirtan, and people start dancing and dancing and dancing. They don't know what it is, but it's moved them. When there was an opportunity, weather-wise and COVID-wise, just as an example, well, two examples. The Harinam in New York City at Union Square Park, or their regular spot, where they would chant, and they would just set up and sit down and have little amplification. And people would gather around, and the videos would show people starting to dance. All different types of people. All different types of people, not just, wild people, but very sophisticated people, because it's moving. And another example, someone forwarded to me, an example of somebody from India speaking about the importance of propagating, Vedic Dharma, because the video was appealing to people. Don't just keep it in your temples. Go and bring it to the public, because it's not being made available to people in general. Then it would show videos of baptisms and this and that's. The mass conversion of people from there, because it's not being propagated. It's not being lived properly either. So in the video clip, it shows extended, different scenes of Harinam Sankirtan. It's a propagation methodology. It's Lord Chaitanya's propagation methodology, but it's not just to bring converts, it's to awaken love of God. So, but it's attractive. It's very attractive. It happens. It happened, and it is happening, and can continue to happen, because the holy name, not just the music, but the holy name, is purifying. So, Harinam Sankirtan is very important. Not just, when people get together and have collective kirtan, that kind of Sankirtan. Public Harinam, very important. Of course, fortunately here in the Potomac Temple area, there are some devotees that are really dedicated to it. And so they regularly perform Harinam Sankirtan. It's very important for Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu, phrase that Prabhupada was fond of repeating. Let everyone become happy. Sarve Sukhino Bhavantu. And the way to make people happy is chant to be happy. It's not that when you chant, you'll never have any of the threefold miseries of life, fourfold miseries of life, threefold miseries of life, but fourfold also. But one's consciousness can be elevated. Anyway, so that's where one's hearing should go, and where one's hearing should not go is this one. Mundane music And mundane music, one way or another, is stimulating thoughts of enjoyment, sense enjoyment, material involvement of the material, an enjoying mood of the material energy. And it can be of the sad kind, oh, she left me, and those kind of things. But it's stimulating thoughts of the mood of sense enjoyment. So that's not that detrimental. Not only detrimental for a household, it's detrimental for spiritual life. So these are lessons. Let's see if there's some discussion. We have another chapter and a half to go. At the end of this chapter, the prostitute Pingala gets a lot of verses. She gets lessons and gives lessons. Comments?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I think, can you elaborate the story of that Mrugi and persistent? I think I did not understand.
You didn't understand what?
The story of Mrugi, and you talked about the story you were referring to.
You're familiar with Ramayana, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Mrigi is just another name for the Bandhaka. So do you know who the Bandhaka is? The Bandhaka Rishi? No. Okay. When Dasarath was in a lot of anxiety about having no sons, he was, one of the things that happened was his minister told him a story that he heard from authoritative sources, that in the previous yuga, Sanat Kumar and others were having a discussion that something that would happen in the future. And it had to do with Dasara. And then what would happen in the future is there would be a king who would not have sons, but a great rishi would by his presence in his neighboring kingdom, would be able to conduct a yajna so that he could have sons. So when Dasarath heard this, well, let's get Rishishringa. And then the message was, it's not so easy. Why? Because his father has him carefully guarded, and that story is told. The Bandhaka, it's a long story. One of these itihasa stories. So he was intensely absorbed in his practices in meditation, solitary, and a heavenly damsel was sent to disturb him. He wasn't disturbed, but she, or some indication. Of course, there's different Ramayanas, but I'll be in big trouble if you don't oblige me. So he left some semen. A deer ate the semen. A deer gave birth to a child, Rishishringa, a human child with deer horns. And later, when he found that child, he understood that this was his child. So he took care of the child. But he kept the child in such a way that he would not fall prey to women by never seeing a woman. He was very meticulous about it. And so the advice was given, it gets complicated, that before the sons were born, Ram and his brothers, there was a daughter. Dasarath had a daughter. And the daughter's name was, who can remind me what the daughter's name was? Shanta. Shanta. So Shanta was given to Dasarath's friend to raise as a daughter. That happened in Mahabharata also. So Shanta is Ramapada's daughter. There was some drought in Ramapada's kingdom, and people were saying it's because of this girl. So he consulted his ministers, and they said it's because you made some mistakes in your I forget exactly what, some spiritual mistakes. So the drought is because of that, and the way to stop the drought is to bring Rishishringa into your kingdom. So get him, bring Rishishringa into the kingdom. Can't. Vibandaka has him, under lock and key. Oh, what to do? And he's like really intense. If he gets ticked off, he gets disturbed, you're finished. The whole kingdom, everything's finished. So what to do? Send some of your society girls here and lure him to come back. And as soon as he steps in the kingdom, everything's going to be nice. The rain will come and everything will be, the curse of the Brahmanas, now it's coming to me. He didn't give proper charity or something like that. There was a large jewel, something like that, and he took the large jewel and gave a smaller jewel, or something that's a larger jewel for a more valuable jewel, or something like that. So then the sage left, and there was no yajna, and therefore there was no rain. So that was the reason. So they sent these girls, and the girls, it's a long story. A super long boat, big as a city, floating on the river, and they parked the boat near where the ashram was, and waited for the proper time. And so they went when Vibandaka was away, taking care of some service. His son was alone. They lured their son. They lured his son, Rishishringa, and he had never seen a woman before, and he was like, bewildered. And his second time around, he went to find them, without some further detail. And they danced and sang, and he was like, wow, where do you guys come from? And we're bringing you to our place. So they got in the boat and they went to their kingdom, and as soon as he stepped in the kingdom, rain came. There's more to the story, it keeps going. But that's the reference. It's from Ramayana. And it's so then Rishishringa married the daughter of Dasarath, who's now being raised as the daughter of Ramapada. And so they're husband and wife. And there's more to the story. And he's the one that eventually went to Dasarath kingdom and performed the yajna. So that's the long story, and the reference here is he, Rishishringa, great personality, became a victim to song and dance by the society girls. Okay? Thank you. Something more? Okay.
I have a question. You were talking about Chandrayana.
About what?
Chandrayana, something that you mentioned.
Yes.
Samskara. Do you mind, can you able to brief a little more about it?
I don't know much. There is a yajna that goes by a certain name, Chandrayana, I think it's said. And if one does this offense and you do that yajna too, it's atonement for some mistake. It's a karma kanda ritual, which we don't involve ourselves with karma kanda rituals. If you make a certain mistake, here's the antidote.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
The sannyasi and brahmachari should take the food cooked by the householder. If a householder does not give the food and eats it himself, he should perform atonement by observing the Chandrayana vow. No explanation of what it is. That's just the name for that particular vow or yagya or whatever. Atonement process.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. For a householder, when we think that whatever I'm working or accumulating wealth is enough, that I don't
Where
want,
does the line go? For
Yeah.
enough is enough, and
Yeah.
more than that is more than enough.
Yeah. At what point that
Well, here's two answers. The one that Prabhupada would give all the time, that's like mission impossible for our modern circumstance, is the 50% rule. You know that one. So then, since that seems to be like mission impossible for, given our modern context of things, some people have tried to do it. Some people have done it. And then circumstance made it, broke that rule for them. So it's hard. But that Prabhupada would say it over and over. And then another second is from Rupa Goswami's verse about renunciation. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarhan upayunjata nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. That's not the verse. Prapanchakataya bodhya hari sambandha vastuna mukshadi kritya go vairagyam bhavatate. That's not it either. Vishaya vinivartante nirnamanashade. That's not it either. It's the verse. Yes, that's it. Yatarham upayunjata. Yatarham upayunjata. Nasaktasya vishaya. So, the yatarham means according to suitability. That's the scriptural reference. Sorry, I'm struggling with the Sanskrit. According to suitability is very subjective. So what's suitable for one may not be suitable for another. What's suitable for one in this circumstance may not be suitable in another circumstance. So it's very subjective. According to suitability means in practical application, so that I can be peaceful. I can continue progressively in Krishna consciousness without obsessing this way or that way, without the mind being distracted this way or that way. Because if one doesn't have that, spiritual compass, there is never enough passion or war. Whatever one has is not enough, and so one is always hankering for more. It's never enough. So the spiritual principle is, let me live my life in such a way that things are maintained reasonably, as this is according to suitability. And I'm striving for simplicity. And striving for simplicity, here's what I require to maintain a life of simplicity. And anything beyond that is meant for Krishna service, in a charitable way. So that there's Krishna service that I'm doing for my simplicity in life, and there's charity that goes to others. And it's a subjective line. Where's the line? It's according to what's suitable for an individual, so that they can progressively and peacefully carry on with their Krishna consciousness. Always striving to increase the for Krishna side and diminish the I don't really need this side. So it's not, for different people, there's different comfort levels, or peaceful levels, or moving forward with, this is my requirement, I can peacefully carry on the Krishna conscious life. Again, always striving for simplicity. Do I really need this? It's not. It's the minimally. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Is it? The sannyas life and household life are different. And what's of necessity for a sannyasi is not necessarily the necessity for a householder specific to carrying forward peacefully. One householder is going to be different from another householder. Our business is not to judge this householder's better because they have less. Their satisfaction and peaceful level is down here and somebody else is up there, and so they're better. Just, each of us are in a different position, spiritually and socially, and so that the main concern for you or a householder or any individual is, I want to peacefully carry out my Krishna consciousness. Let me try to minimize stuff and maximize Krishna consciousness now. Where's that balance level? And let me try to reduce the stuff and increase the direct Krishna consciousness level. I mean, for many of our ISKCON devotees, coming to the stage of vanaprastha is a big deal. Or even preparing for the stage of vanaprastha. So when when the kids are out of the nest and it's just, husband and wife, what's next? Maybe what's next is, let's get some grandchildren going, and then we can be with the grandchildren and maintain attachments to the family. Anyway, or retirement. I had a discussion yesterday at some length with somebody about preparing for retirement. It's a big deal. It's a transition from this to that, just like from a student life to married life, and married life to family life, and family life to moving on from family life. All those transition things are a big deal in how we orient ourselves. So while as a grahastha, what's necessity? Yatarham. Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham. That's the verse. According to suitability. Upayunjita. Without attachment to vishaya. The problem is there's a tendency for vishaya. So it gets all really fuzzy. And really, super subjective. It's all over the place. There's not focus and clarity. Unless one has the mission of human life clearly in the center of one's heart, and then you can keep your hand on the steering wheel and move towards the goal, and streamline it, in a reasonable manner, according to what's necessity, what's suitable for me in this particular stage of my life.
think this is about the story that we just heard a little bit about the
Rishishringa story?
Yeah, I think maybe this might be a little bit of a parenting question, I think.
Mm.
So when we want to screen our kids from all we think they are not good or appropriate, sometimes I saw people or some friends that when they go to college or somewhere outside, they will be more attracted to those things very
Yes.
quickly. So we should have a balance. We should at least make them know these are the
Yeah.
things.
Well, they know. I mean, because when they go to school, they're associating with all kinds of people that don't have any compass. So, the parenting question is what?
So do we really screen from all
No.
these things? No.
Well, every parent is different. Every family structure is different. Parents should know, they do know, and they should know, there's exposure to all kinds of stuff. And their children are seeing stuff. They may not be doing stuff, but they see stuff. Now, as a parent or as a family, how are you going to deal with the fact that all around is stuff, distraction, and etc. Senses and sense objects having a party. That's what's out there for for us as a family and for our kids, our dependents. So now, how as a family are we going to handle this? And it's going to change. It's going to vary from family to family and child to child. If it's too strict, then when the child is out of the sight of the parents, it's going to be party time. I want to go experiment. I'm missing out. I want to have fun. So, parenting is a challenging service. In principle, I'm not a parent, but in principle, my understanding is what's best is relationships that are not overly permissive and overly restrictive, with recognizing the nature of the child or the dependent, and so giving some rope to move, but also some education. There's consequences for this. There's consequences for that. What does it look like? What's that? What's out there? What does it look like when people go down that path? What does it lead to? So, it's education and relationships. I know it's a slippery slope, and it's child to child. It's very different. The relationship has to be a genuine relationship, where it's not just restricting or controlling, etc., etc. It's not just going the other direction. So it rests on education and relationships. That's in a nutshell. Anyone else?
Snehabali Mataji has 3 questions. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So the analogy of honey thief is given for saintly. The analogy of the honey thief is given for saintly people and brahmacharis. It looks like a negative connotation. Could you please comment?
I don't know. With the negative connotation, the bee has been revisited. In between was an elephant, and now it comes back to the bee. I don't see the negative connotation. That the mendicant, sannyasi brahmachari, shouldn't be indulgent, and the householder shouldn't be a miser. That's the, if the miser-like householder gathers things and enjoys things, but specifically with the eating that does not open up their door, etc., to culturally extend themselves to householders and brahmacharis, the mendicants, they're in the miserly position. There's consequences for that. So, I don't see the contradiction. She can send another message that articulate the contradiction that she sees, because I don't see it. Next.
Next question is, only Jiva Goswami says that there are 3 types of honeybees. All others, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, and BBT purports all stated that there are only 2 types of honeybees.
You're a careful listener. So?
That was it, I think.
That's just an observation. Okay. And the answer to that is, there can be different realizations from different personalities, and it's not only permissible, it's lovely.
Third question is, in the story of Rishi Shringa, can this be said that if he was not brought up the way he was brought up, he could have been saved from the attraction of women?
Not necessarily. Depends person to person. It's not that only persons raised like Rishi Shringa can be allured by women. And if he hadn't been raised that way, he would have been saved. We can't say that. Next.
Jnanavan Prabhu says, how can we tell our teenagers or teach them to turn...
What?
How can we tell/teach our teenagers to turn away from the mundane musics? Sometimes I feel that they are getting more and more attached into this, and that reflects in their behavior.
Well, it's just part of growing up in modern times, because it's abundantly available. So the answer goes back to this earlier question. It comes down to relationships and education. Where does that one go? Well, I like it. I'm not going to think about where it goes. Or, whatever. So it's a relationship and education. And in some circumstances, lines have to be drawn. In some circumstances, you make the spiritual options so attractive and lovely and robust that the distraction element reduces in significance. But if specifically with teenagers, if you just get a baseball bat and shake it at them, you've lost them. So that means there has to be some slack. That you can say, learn the hard way. And then learn the hard way means they may go down where not just attraction for music, but other manifestations of absence of culture starts to manifest in their life. And it keeps going. And that's part of the difficulty of parenting. You don't want to see that happen. And when it happens, it hurts. So that you strengthen the relationship and give education. By good example, for starters.
Mara Mataji, regarding accumulation, since we do not know what might come in the future and we don't know where to stop, as you have answered Mataji, that we need to perform charity and live in such a way to carry our Krishna consciousness peacefully. How should one understand that with future consideration...
How should one understand what?
How should one understand that with future consideration, this much accumulation is okay and should be endeavored for practicality?
It's the same question, same answer. Next. That's it. It's not an easy, how should we decide? It's not easy. It's not it's not a fixed in cement or stone or something answer. There has to be flexibility, guided by intelligence, and intelligence says, I need to accept those things that are favorable for bhakti and reject those things that are not favorable for bhakti. And if you don't have that principle operating in your life, there can be a line in stone and it's not going to help you. There has to be a spirit of wanting to accept things that are favorable for bhakti and not accepting things that are unfavorable. So that's surrender, that's submission, that's with faith in the goal. So that's the operative force that will keep you on course. Krishna will then give you intelligence. And when you become weaker in your bhakti, then things get fuzzy again. And when things get fuzzy again, guaranteed it's going to go in the direction of sense enjoyment. Guaranteed. So stay focused on what the goal is and the means to achieve the goal. And that's repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly expressed. The goal and the means to achieve the goal. And if you really want to know a nice verse to start on, it's 10:14:3. The goal and the means to achieve the goal. Go there and just stay there and hang out there. And you'll have a sense of the goal and the means to achieve the goal. Bring that into your heart and you'll be guided nicely. Okay, Srila Prabhupada.